Welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Bajo.
Good to see some thinking games in the show this week, Bajo, starting with the locally developed inFlux.
And Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, mixes up controls and tests our ambidextrous skills.
Just in the interest of variety, we also bring down an evil cult in the goriest way possible in Rise of the Triad.
Plus, we check out Disney Infinity, and Goose has a look at the life of sneaky man Sam Fisher.
But before all that, can you guess the game for this week?
If the Paris police comes looking for me, I'm not here. You don't know me.
What'd you do?
I had nothing to do with that amazing water balloon tossed from the top of the Eiffel Tower. Lies! Lies, I tell you!
That boy is crazier than an outhouse rat.
Looks like my kind of game.
Yeah, a lot of buzz about it. I'm gonna go read the news.
Good game.
id Software co-founder John Carmack is back in the news this week as Oculus VR announced he is joining the company full-time as their Chief Technology Officer. Carmack will now help develop the Oculus Rift headset, as well as continuing his work at id. Triad Worlds has announced that it will be closing down its San Diego development studio, who were responsible for the recent MMO Defiance. However, support and development will continue for Defiance from their Redwood City studio. No details were given regarding how many staff were let go. However, a number of affected employees have been shifted to the Redwood studio.
Surviving an arc fall is easy if you have friends.
Microsoft has announced yet another policy reversal regarding the Xbox One. It will in fact be able to work without the new Kinect sensor plugged in. Microsoft had previously stated the console would not function unless the sensor was connected. However, due to widespread privacy concerns, they will now allow the console to work without it. However, each console sold will still include a Kinect. Now sports! And the results are in from the Australian Cyber League's second major event, which was held recently in Melbourne. 220 players gathered to compete in League of Legends, StarCraft 2 and Call of Duty Black Ops, vying for a share of over $18,000 worth of prizes. The event saw plenty of new blood challenging top players, with the unsigned LoL team Wobbly Bears shocking the field and blitzing their way to the final. However, the veterans at Team Immunity, riding on their recent victory at the PAX Riot event, held firm.
And there it is, Immunity taking away the game.
Wow, and the grand final. That is first place for Immunity. Absolutely huge.
StarCraft 2's Igers showed outstanding micro skills and command over the TVZ matchup.
The Marines are just going to be able to crash through. The mic shots are massive. The mutants are dead.
GG!
Managing to swarm through the base of runner-up Patreus and claim the top spot.
And the hug. No love lost between these two guys.
That's right.
Finally, a nail-biting Black Ops final saw newcomers Capital Punishment almost pull off an upset win over favourites Team Immunity.
Oh no!
However, Team Immunity managed a desperate comeback in the Capture the Flag round, clutching the win from the jaws of defeat.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is all she wrote. Call of Duty Championships for ACL Melbourne. The winners, of course, Team Immunity.
And now to Bajo with the weather. Thanks, Bajo. I don't go outside, so I assume it's rubbish. It's nice indoors.
Good game.
Over on Spawn Point this weekend, we have a look at Disney Infinity, which is doing some interesting things. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there who are wondering, how does it compare to Skylanders? And if you don't know, Skylanders is a massive deal for younger gamers. So Hex, is Disney Infinity worth taking out a bank loan for?
Well, that's a good question. And if you've never played one of these kinds of games before, it sits somewhere between a RPG platformer and a kind of collectible game. Buying the complete range of Disney characters is pretty costly. Depending on which packs you buy them in, you'll be looking at $300 to $400 to buy the game and all 17 launch figures. And then there are more figures coming later in the year on top of that. But you don't need to buy all the characters. You can complete the game with just the characters in the starter pack. There'll just be a few little areas and sections that are locked off unless you have those characters to access them.
Yes, however, if you are a completionist and you need to have them all, then it's a pretty big sticker price. And that cost is on par with Skylanders. It makes a difference to me that they put a lot of work into the style and detail of these Disney figures. I'm a bit of a figurine collector, Hex, and I think these are quite well made. In fact, I would happily have these sit upon my shelf. They could rest there and I would even dust them. But the biggest factor here is the quality gameplay they've created.
Well, let's start with what comes with the game. You get the base platform and these 3 figures. Just like Skylanders, you drop the figure on the platform and then they appear in the game. But a big difference in Infinity is that each character has their own story campaign.
All hands to the sails!
The Incredibles campaign is pretty much Grand Theft Auto with superpowers. What it does best is walk that perfect line between the fun of reckless destruction while keeping everything wrapped in a child-friendly setting. You can do things like pick up cars and hurl them into buildings, but you'll notice the passengers always jump away to safety.
That said, you shouldn't go expecting too much from the plots.
Thank you, Incredibles, for saving us.
No thanks are necessary. It's all part of the...
Whoa, whoa, whoa. I should be the one thanking the Incredibles.
There are new storylines within the film's settings, but they're pretty bare bones. It's a bit like the Lego film games we've seen where the characters become simplified, cartoony versions of the originals. These thin plots are essentially excuses for the game's missions.
I was surprised at how differently the campaign's played though. Pirates of the Caribbean focuses around naval battles where you use your cannons to blast enemy boats.
Surrender now!
But there's quite a bit of depth to it as you need to get the right line of fire while making sure the rolling waves aren't going to block your shots.
Reload the guns! Down to the locker with ya!
And then there's Monsters University, which taps into American college student rivalries.
Wow! That was kinda cool!
Each one of the 3 campaigns is about 6 hours long too, so there's loads of gameplay here. But the big kicker for me is the Toy Box mode, which mixes shades of Minecraft's world building and Little Big Planet's game creation tools. We were able to put together this Darren-themed obstacle course in just a few hours.
There's a robust amount of tools to build terrain and structures, and then there are the theme discs. When we drop one from Wreck-It Ralph onto our Darren city, suddenly he turned into blocks of cake as the world gets a sugar rush coat of paint.
Yeah, that was awesome, and we've barely touched the surface of game creation tools. You can drop in enemies with specific behaviors, have checkpoints, and change camera angles. It's nuts. I can't wait to see what the community builds down the track. And I was happy to hear that levels built on one console can be accessed by anyone, whether they're playing on a Wii U or a PS3 or a 360.
Yeah, I wish more games did that kind of cross-platform content thing. It's interesting that Disney have invested so much in this game. I heard they had 300 people working on this for 3 years, and I think that shows because when I think of Skylanders, it's just so simple, but this isn't really.
That said, it's still operating off that model where you cannot access every part of the game unless you physically purchase more figurines.
Yeah, and at least if you look at a Lego game, when you get it, you get everything, that's it, and you've got all that content to just unlock and explore, and there's no additional things to consider down the track.
What's he up to now? Trying to take over the whole frontier, as far as I can tell. One town at a time.
It is interesting, though, that they're holding back on some pretty big franchises with Star Wars and Marvel, and you can almost see the dollar signs if they were to release those each year at Christmas. But that does mean longevity for this game and the power of the Force.
I like that Disney are actually taking games seriously now because besides Epic Mickey, they've been pretty quiet on the games front.
Yes, and as we said, our full review of Disney Infinity will be over on Spawn Point this weekend, but for now, something completely different, an old game reborn with Rise of the Triad.
Massive firepower. Yeah, I would say this is their base of operations.
Rise of the Triad is from another time, a time of Quake syndrome, rocket launches, sidestepping bullets, and of course giblets. Lots and lots of giblets.
Intruders!
Deploying an open fire on the ridge!
Dang!
This is a reboot of the 1994 game of the same name. You pick one of 5 different characters, each with their own speed versus endurance pros and cons. And then the slaughterhouse begins as you mow down Nazi-like enemies through old-school non-linear locations. And this game is fast. Really fast.
Yes, and maybe I've still got a bit of an Oculus Rift hangover hex, but this game reminded me that my 32-year-old stomach can no longer handle these kind of fast-paced, old-school FPS games. I got so much motion sickness within a couple of hours of playing this. And then when you take the mushroom... Oh, it all goes... Oh, it was even worse.
Yeah, I never get quite as sick as you, Bajo, but that floaty feel to the movement and the old school perspective, it's just a little bit hard to handle in long bursts, I think.
Yeah, it's a vomitorium. And in fact, the developers revel in that, and they're adding Oculus Rift support. So if you are like me and you're partial to a bit of motion sickness, I'd recommend putting the field of view to the maximum setting, which is 120, and picking the slowest character you can. Or maybe just not playing this game, because Rise of the Triad makes no apologies for its dated gameplay. It's a feature.
Drop your
You'll be searching for keys, finding secret rooms, and the odd bit of platforming. And while this game was phenomenal for its time, it won't be long before this kind of level design will make you rage quit.
I need backup.
There is a lot of nostalgia associated with the Triad name, though. In fact, the original game did actually start out as an expansion for Wolfenstein, so it does feel a bit like that at times. And if you are a die-hard fan of the original or miss those days of giblets and rockets, then you might just get a kick out of it. I mean, the new visuals are passable, but certainly not without rough edges.
Yes, and this game wants you to move through the levels quickly. That's part of the challenge. But the checkpoint system is totally unforgiving, and between deadly blades and rocket-wielding enemies that can one-shot you, it's hard to have a good time.
Personally, I think if you're going to reboot something like this, then you have to get on board with some modern game design elements, like decent checkpoints. Otherwise, you're just punishing gamers for no reason.
Yeah, and having a few checkpoints extra here and there isn't going to dilute the experience. You can still have that nostalgic playthrough, and I'd happily play through a game for nostalgia's sake, as long as it doesn't halt my progress all the time. I do miss Twitch shooter games like this though, Hex. There's just something that tugs at those early FPS memories as you smash down those A and D keys, dodging rockets and plowing through endless goons.
You know, I thought the multiplayer might save it, but really it's just a confusing, unbalanced rocket fest, and you're better off playing something like Quake Live.
Ludicrous cheer.
Yeah, I did enjoy that you can be a dog and also fly, and I also like that what you type is actually said out loud by some sort of voice system.
Penis. Lol. Goofies.
But yes, the fun here was short-lived, so I'm giving it 4 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It was 3 out of 10 from me.
One of the very first jobs, I almost went into the games industry much earlier, but I took a little hiatus, and when I tried to get back into it, I started in QA. I got a job testing a game called The Guild 2. There was these different modes that you could play, and it was all about this like dynasty. And one of the game modes was just called Endless Mode, because you would just start this family and play. And I was like, Endless Mode sounds boring to me. And so I'm supposed to just be testing. So I write up a bug that says like, Endless Mode does not sound fun. I suggest you call it Dynasty Mode. And like that, as a tester, you're probably not really supposed to write something up like that. But they're like, oh yeah. Oh, that sounds really cool. Like, that sounds way better than Endless Mode. So I think that kind of started the ball rolling for me having more conversations into design elements, and then kind of got into design.
Good game.
inFlux is an Australian-developed indie game all about a little ball from out of space who's crashed into some strange land.
Before we go any further, Hex, I think we should give this ball a name. I don't want to call it the little ball for the rest of the review.
Or how about Balls McGee?
That's pretty good.
We could just call it Barry, I guess.
Yeah. Balls McGee has a few special abilities. He can push or pull certain items around, or charge himself up to slow time and get a speed boost. And that's about it.
The game is broken up into 2 parts. One has our little Bill Balls Baggins rolling around some fairly lush landscapes, looking for blue orbs. Once he's found them, he can get them to follow him and use them to activate portals into these derelict glass houses.
As Brittany Spheres crosses into the portal, she's whisked away to a seemingly alternate dimension where the glass house is floating in the sky, and it comes alive with light and puzzles.
Wait, so Balls McGee is a girl now?
Why not, Hex?
Well, the puzzle solving is fairly straightforward. You just have to get Balls McBalls to guide an orange ball into an orange goal, and eventually they'll add in a green ball and a green goal. And you'll flip switches to change gravity and drag balls around until you get them there, at which point you're booted out back into the world.
And that's about all there is to this game. Hex, I'm not usually a big fan of the move a ball around a level genre.
It's like a ball-rolling puzzler.
Oh, yeah. Well, I found this one particularly dull, sadly. To the developer's credit, it's not technically bad. There's decent graphics and soothing music, and it all works quite well. But there's no joie de vivre, no emotion, and so it just felt a bit like a tech demo.
Yeah, there's no characters to attach to or emotion to inspire it, really. I mean, here we are calling it Balls McGee just to give it a bit of personality.
Yeah, and I really do feel like it needed something. Maybe if it had a bit of narration or a little alien or hamster inside the ball, just something to bring Bally Von Trapp to life.
Yeah, it would be like if they took GLaDOS out of Portal or the narration out of Thomas Was Alone. I mean, those games would go from being classics to just pretty forgettable puzzle platformers, really.
Yeah, and another reason why it really needs this is that I didn't really enjoy the puzzles, to be honest. It's just not satisfying dragging and pushing clumsy balls around, and I never really felt like I'd solved anything. I just flipped some switches and rolled Michael Bublé around a bit.
Yes, and not to mention some of the puzzles felt a bit broken at times, like this one where you had to get an orange ball out of a pit of lava. It sounds simple, but I spent 10 minutes trying to get that frickin' ball out of there. I mean, I figured I was clearly missing some clever way to solve it, but nope, it just needed to be pulled at the exact right angle.
Yeah, that's not even a puzzle, it's just frustrating design. What are you giving it, Hex?
Well, I think it's great that they've tried to put these puzzle mechanics into a game that looks this good, but you know, at the end of the day, I just didn't find it fun, so I'm giving it 4 out of 10.
Yeah, sadly, I didn't have a good time either with the adventures of Bally McBallington, so I'm giving it 4 out of 10 as well.
To get one more in there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Good game.
He's a stealthy, silver-haired veteran of the spy game with a cranky attitude and a rather conspicuous piece of headgear. Sam Fisher, this is your extra life. Enrolled at a young age in a military boarding school, you spent the majority of your formative years training to become the ruthlessly effective field operative you're known as today. You did, however, find some time for romance, marrying a fellow CIA operative and fathering a daughter, Sarah. Unfortunately, just like your professional life, you prefer to work alone, and the relationship soon fizzled. Sarah went to live with her mother, and you began employment with the sneaky government subdivision known as Third Echelon. They utilised your skills in shadowy sneaking and brutal interrogation to save the world from time to time, by allowing you the fifth freedom, also known as the freedom to stack guards in a large pile. They geared you up with military tech such as spy cameras, sticky shockers, and of course your now infamous night vision goggles with their trio of green lights that patrolling guards were somehow oblivious to. This gadgetry, coupled with your mix of covert acrobatics and aggressive diplomacy, made you almost indestructible. That was until tragedy struck and Sarah was killed by a drunk driver. After that, your life quickly unraveled. You went rogue, and before long, things had gone from bad to worse. Soon, you were so deep undercover, it would take a miracle to drag you out again. Luckily, this miracle took the form of an old colleague, still employed by the now corrupt Third Echelon, who informed you that Sarah's death had been staged to protect you both. With this new information, you set about to reclaim your old life, and in doing so, expose the mole who led to the agency's downfall.
You're the mole.
And while all this danger and stress would be enough to send any normal person to an early grave, you've managed to use both these global and personal conflicts as some sort of fountain of youth, coming out of each daring escapade looking younger and younger. Now fresh-faced and re-energized, you lead the reformed and imaginatively renamed Fourth Echelon into a new era of espionage.
Welcome to Fourth Echelon.
And while you may be looking more Jason-born than born in the 50s, you're still the steely-voiced, leg-splitting senior citizen we remember slinking around the shadows with, saving the world one neck snap at a time.
Good game.
Thanks, Goose. Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons is a kind of co-op adventure revolving around two brothers. The twist, your co-op partner is yourself, as you control both the older and the younger brother with the left and right thumbsticks.
The story begins with the boys' memory of the death of their mother. And now with their father ill too, they must journey together to a mystical healing tree to obtain a remedy for him.
Ah, Bajo, call me corny, but I love a fantasy tale based around a mighty quest.
And what a quest it is, Hex.
a wonderful journey through beautiful and creative landscapes. I just love that art style. It's got that painterly quality to it. Plus, the characters don't speak in any known language, and we know so little about this world, so you're constantly surprised by the terrain and its inhabitants. You'll creep through caverns with trolls, sail frozen rivers, and my absolute favourite section where we were climbing through the bodies of fallen giant soldiers.
Yeah, it got quite dark there suddenly, didn't it? You could be fooled into thinking that this is a game for younger gamers because of its simple controls and cartoony look. But it really surprises you with some truly emotional moments, as well as some fairly sinister themes.
Yeah, so let's talk about this control system and how it plays into the puzzles. Controlling the two brothers with both thumbsticks is an inherently tricky task. It plays with your brain, kind of like trying to pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time. So for that reason, the only other buttons you'll use on the controller are the triggers to interact with objects, and the left and right bumpers to move the camera.
Most of the puzzles aren't tough to figure out. The challenge comes simply from having to maneuver both brothers at once and keep track of which buttons you need to hold and which to let go of. It sounds easy, and it is, as long as you keep each brother on their side of the screen the whole time, because the moment that they cross paths, it's easy to get muddled. You'll do a lot of running into walls as your brain tries to catch up.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because you could probably take your time with a lot of these puzzles and just move one brother at a time if you can get away with it, but you know, you'll naturally want to challenge yourself and move them both at the same time. It's a really good control system, I liked it.
Things get a bit trickier when you start scaling castles and walls. There was this one section where the brothers were tied together and you had to swing them one by one to move them along the wall. And with that constant crossover, it just got harder and harder to remember which one to let go of, and I found myself saying out loud, left, right, left, right.
There's a nice aspect to this co-op as well, in that each brother has his own set of strengths and weaknesses. Little brother can fit through wide cage bars, for example, but he can't swim. Big brother is stronger and can give little bro a boost when he needs it, as well as carrying his sibling through water. There's a really nice sense of reliance on each other, which actually carries over into some of the more serious story themes as well.
There's also little lovely moments to have with creatures and NPCs in the landscape too. They're not there to serve any other purpose than just to add lightness and humour, but I'm glad they're there. There's no button to fight. Your only options are to dodge and manoeuvre the boys through a whole host of dangers.
Yes, and it is a land fraught with danger, as well as a few twists and surprises which we won't spoil. But I think the game's most tremendous achievement is being able to create such a moving experience out of something that at first seems quite unremarkable with a simple idea.
Yeah, absolutely. My only real criticism is that sometimes the animations are a little awkward, and also the boys have trouble interacting with the odd object.
Yeah, I noticed that too. In fact, a lot of the interactions with objects like wall climbs and levers force you to have big brother on the left and little brother on the right. It just won't work if you try and swap them around, which seemed a bit silly.
Yeah, and if you approach a lever the wrong way, sometimes they'll do this awkward dance trying to correct themselves and get stuck. It's only a small issue, and most of the time it is fairly smooth sailing. This is one of those experiences that isn't about the challenge, and for that reason it might be a good entry game for inexperienced gamers. But in saying that, I think it's got enough uniqueness and depth to it that warrants a playthrough for even seasoned gamers.
I absolutely agree. And it's not a long playthrough either. You could probably knock this over in a long, lazy afternoon, so I'd definitely recommend it. It explores an interesting control concept, and I think it was a smart move to keep the rest of those controls so simple. But most of all, I found the story so affecting. You know, I got a bit misty-eyed towards the end, I'll admit.
It is surprisingly moving, isn't it? It's also a nice idea to use the camera to open up the stretch of land in front of you. I also like those little benches placed throughout the game. They give you a nice view of the area you'll be headed to next.
There were a few moments that I thought drew inspiration from classic high fantasy, in particular Lord of the Rings, which I'm absolutely fine with. What are you giving it, Bajo?
Well, at first I thought the controls would drive me crazy because they are so different and unique, and I fear change Hex, but they didn't. They worked well. And for the most part, this is a simple idea that is executed well, so I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, it's a kind of unexpected, heart-tugging experience. It really lingered with me for a few days afterwards, so I thought this was beautiful. I'm giving it 8.5.
Good game.
So, did you guess the game for this week? Is that my Storm cosplay wig?
Yes.
Oh. It was Hannah Montana Spotlight World Tour. Released in 2007, you tour the world just like Hannah, performing in sold-out shows in cities like London, Tokyo, and Paris. Basically, it was a dancing Wii Waggle-Mote game or a PS2 dance pad jump-around game.
You know you got the best of both worlds.
And it was developed by Avalanche Software, the same studio behind Disney Infinity.
And Hex, we better wrap this up because it looks like the quiet period of the year is over. Next week we have some massive games, starting with Splinter Cell Blacklist.
What are you planning?
We're past planning.
It's a trap. Get out of there now.
And it's Conspiracy Central in the Bureau, XCOM Declassified.
We never saw Paris! Whoops. Yeah.
Plus the open world chaotic mayhem of Saints Row 4.
Till next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Budget out.
It's a really expensive wig.
Budget.
It was beautiful
So
once.
budget, and then when I put the wig on it, I'm budget.
Yeah.
Different person.
The girl version. You don't make a very pretty girl, I'm sorry.
No, I don't. I don't know if I should be offended or not.
It's the 5 o'clock shadow coming through.
There you go.